The morning sun beat down mercilessly on the rocky terrain of Afghanistan's Kunar province. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez wiped sweat from his forehead as he adjusted his rifle scope, scanning the valley below through the early morning haze. His team of 6 Navy SEALs had been moving through this hostile territory for 3 days, tracking a high-value target who had been coordinating attacks against coalition forces. Rodriguez had been leading special operations teams for 8 years, but something felt different about this mission. The intelligence reports were sketchy at best, and the local informants had been unusually quiet. His gut told him they were walking into something bigger than anticipated, but the mission parameters were clear: locate and capture or eliminate the target known as the Ghost, a Taliban commander who seemed to vanish whenever coalition forces got close. The team consisted of Rodriguez as team leader, Petty Officer Jake Thompson on communications, Hospital Corpsman Second Class David Kim as medic, Petty Officer Brian Walsh handling explosives and breaching, Petty Officer Carlos Mendez as the team's designated marksman, and Petty Officer First Class Mike Sullivan covering their 6. Each man carried approximately 60 pounds of gear including ammunition, water, medical supplies, and specialized equipment needed for their mission. As they moved through the narrow mountain pass, Thompson's radio crackled with updates from their operations center. The drone surveillance had lost visual contact with their target 12 hours ago, but heat signatures suggested significant movement in the village of Ghaziabad, roughly 2 kilometers from their current position. Local sources reported unusual Taliban activity in the area, with fighters moving in from surrounding provinces. Rodriguez made the decision to establish an observation post on the ridge overlooking Ghaziabad. The position offered excellent visibility of the village and surrounding approaches, but it also left them exposed with limited escape routes. As a 20-year veteran of special operations, Rodriguez understood the calculated risks involved in such positions, but the mission required eyes on the target area. The team spent 4 hours carefully moving to their chosen position, using available cover and moving in tactical bounds to avoid detection. Each SEAL carried enough ammunition for a sustained firefight, but their primary mission remained reconnaissance and surgical strike capability. They established fields of fire and communication protocols, with Thompson maintaining contact with their command center and monitoring Taliban radio frequencies. By midday, the heat had become almost unbearable. The rocky terrain absorbed and radiated the sun's energy, creating a natural oven that tested even these hardened warriors' endurance. Kim distributed water and salt tablets while monitoring each team member for signs of heat exhaustion. Proper hydration and electrolyte balance were critical for maintaining combat effectiveness in such extreme conditions. Through their spotting scopes and rifle optics, the SEALs observed normal village activity throughout the early afternoon. Women moved between buildings carrying water vessels, children played in the dusty streets, and elderly men gathered in small groups under whatever shade they could find. Nothing appeared immediately suspicious, but Rodriguez noticed subtle details that suggested otherwise. The adult males were notably absent from the usual afternoon activities. No farmers worked the small fields surrounding the village, no merchants moved goods through the area, and no vehicles traveled the main road that connected Ghaziabad to larger population centers. Most tellingly, the livestock that normally grazed freely around the village perimeter had been moved into secure compounds. Mendez, positioned with the team's precision rifle, reported movement in several buildings that suggested concealed personnel. Heat shimmer from the rifle scopes made positive identification difficult, but shadowy figures could be seen moving between structures in patterns consistent with military positioning rather than civilian activity. As afternoon turned toward evening, the village's true nature began revealing itself. Armed fighters emerged from concealed positions, moving with military precision as they established defensive positions around the village perimeter. Rodriguez counted at least 40 combatants, far more than intelligence estimates had suggested, for the entire region. The situation became more complex when Thompson intercepted radio communications, indicating that additional Taliban forces were moving toward Ghaziabad from multiple directions. The intercept suggested a coordinated operation involving more than 200 fighters, with heavy weapons and explosive devices being positioned throughout the area. Rodriguez faced a critical decision. Their mission parameters called for observation and reporting with engagement only if the high-value target presented himself. However, the developing tactical situation suggested they had stumbled into a major Taliban staging operation that posed significant threat to coalition forces throughout the region. The team leader called for immediate extraction, but Thompson reported that helicopter operations were suspended due to a sandstorm approaching from the west. Weather conditions would prevent aircraft operations for at least 6 hours, leaving the SEAL team isolated in increasingly hostile territory. Darkness approached. Rodriguez realized their observation post had become a trap. Taliban forces had likely detected their presence and were moving to surround their position. The team's night vision equipment would provide some advantage in darkness, but they were outnumbered by more than 30-1 against fighters who knew the terrain intimately. Kim distributed additional ammunition while Walsh prepared explosive charges that could be used to cover their withdrawal. Each SEAL carried fragmentation grenades and smoke grenades, but their primary defense would be disciplined fire and tactical movement. Sullivan established communication with any coalition forces in the area, but the nearest friendly units were more than 50 kilometers away. The temperature began dropping rapidly as the sun disappeared behind the western peaks, but the cooling air brought little relief. Rodriguez knew that darkness would bring increased Taliban activity and likely probing attacks designed to determine their exact position and strength. Through thermal imaging devices, Mendez reported heat signatures moving up the hillsides below. Their position. The Taliban fighters were using the cover of darkness to close the distance, moving in small groups through gullies and behind rock formations. Their movement suggested professional military training rather than typical insurgent tactics. Rodriguez gathered his team for a quick briefing. They had adequate ammunition for a sustained firefight, but their position offered limited defensive advantages against a determined assault from multiple directions. The rocky terrain that had provided concealment during their approach now created numerous avenues of approach for attacking forces. The stage was set for a desperate fight for survival. 6 elite warriors found themselves surrounded by overwhelming numbers of enemy fighters in terrain that favored the attackers. Their training, equipment, and brotherhood would be tested against impossible odds in the unforgiving mountains of Afghanistan. The first shots came at 22:30 hours, muzzle flashes erupting from 3 different directions simultaneously. Rodriguez had expected the attack, but the coordination and precision of the Taliban assault exceeded his worst expectations. These were, not local farmers with old rifles. These fighters moved and shot like trained soldiers. Bullets ricocheted off the rocks around their position, sending sharp stone fragments flying through the air. Sullivan immediately returned fire toward the nearest muzzle flashes while Mendez engaged targets at longer range with his precision rifle. The distinctive crack of incoming rounds told Rodriguez they were facing modern assault rifles and possibly machine guns. Thompson worked frantically on his radio, trying to coordinate with the operations center while incoming fire forced him to keep his head down. The sandstorm was still preventing helicopter operations, but he managed to establish contact with an AC-130 gunship that was approximately 40 minutes away from their position. The Taliban attack came in waves, with groups of fighters advancing under covering fire, while others maintained sustained suppression of the SEAL position. Rodriguez recognized classic small unit tactics being employed against his team. These were not random insurgent attacks but coordinated military operations. Kim moved between team members, checking for wounds and redistributing ammunition as the firefight intensified. The rocky position that had seemed defensible during daylight reconnaissance now felt like a death trap, with enemy fire coming from elevated positions on 3 sides of their small perimeter. Walsh prepared demolition charges that could be used to collapse approaches to their position, but the enemy fighters were advancing through multiple routes that made selective use of explosives difficult. The SEALs needed to conserve their limited supply of grenades and explosive devices for the most critical moments. Through his night vision equipment, Rodriguez could see at least 20 Taliban fighters maneuvering up the hillside directly below their position. The fighters moved in tactical bounds, with some providing covering fire while others advanced from cover to cover. Their discipline and coordination indicated extensive military training. Mendez reported engaging multiple targets at ranges between 200 and 400 meters. But the enemy continued advancing despite taking casualties. His precision fire was effective, but could not stop the sheer number of fighters moving toward their position from multiple directions simultaneously. The sound of ricocheting bullets mixed with the sharp reports of outgoing fire as the SEALs maintained disciplined shooting patterns. Each warrior controlled his rate of fire to conserve ammunition while engaging the most immediate threats to their position. Years of training took over as they fought with mechanical precision despite the overwhelming odds. Sullivan spotted movement on their left flank and engaged a group of Taliban fighters who had worked their way to within 50 meters of the SEAL position. His accurate fire stopped their advance temporarily, but radio intercepts indicated more enemy forces moving up the same approach route. The firefight had been raging for 30 minutes when Thompson reported disturbing intelligence from intercepted communications. The Taliban forces were not simply trying to overrun the SEAL position. They were positioning heavy weapons, including mortars, and rocket-propelled grenades for a coordinated assault designed to eliminate all 6 Americans. Rodriguez realized their situation was deteriorating rapidly. The enemy had superior numbers, intimate knowledge of the terrain, and increasingly sophisticated weapons being brought to bear against his small team. Ammunition consumption was becoming a critical factor, as the firefight showed no signs of diminishing intensity. Kim reported that while no team members had suffered serious wounds, several had minor cuts from rock fragments, and everyone was showing signs of fatigue from the sustained combat stress. Dehydration remained a concern despite the cooler nighttime temperatures, as the physical demands of combat increased water requirements significantly. The tactical situation became more complex when Walsh identified the distinctive sound of mortar tubes being deployed somewhere in the darkness below their position. Indirect fire would make their rocky shelter untenable and force them to abandon their position with limited options for tactical withdrawal. Mendez continued engaging targets with his precision rifle, but reported that enemy fighters were using advanced night vision equipment that negated much of the SEALs' technological advantage. The Taliban forces had clearly prepared extensively for this engagement and possessed equipment that matched or exceeded standard insurgent capabilities. Radio intercepts revealed that the Taliban commanders were coordinating a final assault designed to overrun the SEAL position before coalition reinforcements could arrive. More than 60 fighters were positioned around the hilltop, with additional forces moving up from the village to support the attack. Sullivan engaged targets on the right flank while Rodriguez coordinated defensive fires and tried to identify possible escape routes. The terrain that had provided concealment during their approach now channeled attacking forces along predictable routes that the SEALs could engage effectively, despite being outnumbered. The first mortar rounds impacted approximately 100 meters from their position at 23:15 hours. The explosions sent rock fragments and debris showering down on the SEALs, while the concussion waves made communication difficult. Walsh recognized the distinctive sound of 82mm mortars being adjusted onto their location. Thompson reported that the AC-130 gunship was still 20 minutes away from their position, but weather conditions and the proximity of enemy forces to the SEAL team would complicate close air support operations. The gunship crew would need precise target identification to avoid engaging friendly forces in the darkness. Rodriguez made the difficult decision to prepare for tactical withdrawal from their position before mortar fire made movement impossible. The team had inflicted significant casualties on the attacking Taliban forces, but overwhelming numbers and indirect fire support made their current position untenable. As the SEALs prepared to move, Mendez reported something unusual through his rifle scope. A single muzzle flash had appeared from a ridge approximately 800 meters away, followed by the distinctive sound of a high-powered rifle. One of the Taliban fighters coordinating the assault on their left flank suddenly dropped. The mysterious marksman fired again and another Taliban fighter fell. Rodriguez could not identify the shooter's position or determine whether this was friendly or enemy fire, but the effect on the Taliban assault was immediate and dramatic. Enemy fighters began looking toward the distant ridge instead of focusing on the SEAL position. Radio intercepts indicated confusion among Taliban commanders as they tried to identify the source of precision fire that was eliminating their assault leaders. The coordinated attack began losing momentum as enemy fighters sought cover from the unknown sniper. rather than advancing on the SEAL team. Sullivan observed through his night vision that several Taliban positions had gone silent after the mysterious marksman engaged them. Whoever was providing this unexpected fire support possessed exceptional shooting skills and intimate knowledge of the tactical situation developing around the SEAL team. The situation was changing rapidly, but Rodriguez knew his team remained in extreme danger despite the intervention of the unknown sniper. Taliban forces still held overwhelming numerical superiority and possessed heavy weapons that could eliminate his team if properly employed against their position. The mysterious sniper's third shot silenced the Taliban mortar position just as another round was being prepared for firing. Through his night vision scope, Mendez watched the mortar crew scatter for cover, abandoning their weapon in the face of precision fire from an unknown location. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. Someone was deliberately targeting the most critical threats to the SEAL team. Rodriguez tried to establish radio contact with any coalition forces that might be providing sniper support, but Thompson confirmed no friendly units were operating in their area. The nearest coalition base was 50 kilometers away, and all aircraft remained grounded due to the continuing sandstorm. The identity of their mysterious benefactor remained unknown. The Taliban radio traffic intercepted by Thompson revealed growing confusion and concern among enemy commanders. Their fighters reported taking accurate fire from multiple positions, though the SEALs could identify only a single sniper location. The psychological effect on Taliban forces was significant, as uncertainty replaced the confidence they had shown during their initial assault. Walsh observed enemy fighters abandoning exposed positions and seeking heavy cover as the unknown marksman continued engaging high-value targets. Taliban squad leaders and weapons crews were being systematically eliminated by someone who clearly understood military tactics and possessed exceptional marksmanship skills. Kim redistributed ammunition among the team members, while they took advantage of the reduced enemy pressure to assess their tactical situation. The intervention of the mysterious sniper had disrupted the Taliban assault, but Rodriguez knew their position remained untenable once enemy forces regrouped and adapted their tactics. The sniper's fourth and fifth shots came in rapid succession, eliminating 2 Taliban fighters who had been attempting to flank the SEAL position from the right side. Mendez noted that the shooter was engaging targets at ranges exceeding 600 meters in darkness, a level of precision that indicated advanced training and equipment. Sullivan spotted muzzle flashes from Taliban positions as enemy fighters began returning fire toward the suspected sniper location. However, their shots appeared to be directed at empty terrain, suggesting the mysterious marksman was using advanced concealment techniques or changing positions between shots. Radio intercepts revealed that Taliban commanders were calling for additional reinforcements and heavy weapons to deal with what they believed was a larger coalition force. The psychological impact of precision sniper fire had magnified their perception of the threat they faced, causing them to overestimate the size of opposition forces. Thompson established brief contact with the approaching AC-130 gunship, but the crew reported they could not distinguish between friendly and enemy forces in the darkness. Close air support would require clear target identification and distance from friendly positions that was impossible given the current tactical situation. The mysterious sniper continued engaging targets with methodical precision, focusing on Taliban fighters who posed the greatest threat to the SEAL team. Each shot was carefully selected to maximum tactical effect, eliminating enemy machine gunners, grenade throwers, and assault leaders who were coordinating attacks on the hilltop position. Rodriguez realized that whoever was providing sniper support possessed detailed knowledge of infantry tactics and could assess the tactical situation with remarkable accuracy. The target selection demonstrated understanding of which enemy positions posed the greatest immediate danger to surrounded friendly forces. Mendez attempted to identify the sniper's position using his precision rifle scope, but could detect no muzzle flash or heat signature from the suspected location. The marksman was either using advanced flash suppression equipment or firing from a completely concealed position that negated visual detection. The Taliban assault had been stalled for nearly an hour by the combination of disciplined SEAL defensive fire and precision shots from the unknown sniper. Enemy forces remained in position around the hilltop, but had ceased their aggressive attempts to close distance and overrun the surrounded Americans. Kim reported that team members were managing their ammunition consumption effectively, but sustained. Combat operations were taking a physical toll. Fatigue, dehydration, and combat stress were affecting performance, despite their exceptional training and conditioning. Walsh prepared additional defensive charges while monitoring Taliban positions. For signs of renewed assault activity, enemy forces were adapting to the sniper threat by using better concealment and moving in smaller groups, but their coordination had been significantly disrupted by the loss of key personnel. The sniper's 10th shot eliminated a Taliban fighter who had been attempting to direct mortar fire onto the SEAL position. The precision of the shot, made in darkness at extreme range against a partially concealed target, impressed even the veteran SEALs who were accustomed to exceptional marksmanship. Sullivan observed that enemy fighters were becoming increasingly reluctant to expose themselves for effective offensive action. The combination of accurate defensive fire from the SEAL position and deadly precision from the unknown sniper had created a psychological barrier that was affecting Taliban tactical effectiveness. Radio traffic indicated that Taliban commanders were requesting permission to withdraw from the engagement, but their superiors were demanding continued pressure on what they believed was a significant coalition operation. The enemy chain of command was struggling with conflicting priorities and incomplete tactical information. Thompson intercepted communications, suggesting that Taliban forces believed they were facing a coordinated ambush involving multiple coalition units. The effectiveness of 6 SEALs and 1 unknown sniper had created the impression of a much larger friendly force, causing enemy commanders to request reinforcements instead of pressing their numerical advantage. The mysterious marksman's shooting continued with mechanical precision, engaging one target approximately every 3 minutes. Each shot was followed by the distinctive sound of a Taliban fighter falling or scrambling for better cover, maintaining constant pressure on enemy forces while conserving ammunition. Rodriguez attempted to coordinate with the unknown sniper using standard military radio frequencies but received no response. Whoever was providing fire support was either unable or unwilling to establish direct communication with the surrounded SEAL team. Mendez noted that the sniper was demonstrating remarkable fire discipline, engaging only targets that posed direct threats to the SEAL position while avoiding shots that might reveal his location to searching Taliban forces. The tactical patience required for such shooting under combat conditions indicated extensive military training. As the standoff continued, Kim observed that Taliban forces were beginning to show signs of demoralization. The constant threat of precise sniper fire combined with effective defensive shooting from the SEALs had created a tactical stalemate that favored the surrounded Americans despite their numerical disadvantage. The identity of their mysterious protector remained unknown, but his intervention had transformed a hopeless tactical situation into a survivable engagement. Rodriguez knew that dawn would bring new challenges as improved visibility would benefit Taliban forces. But the unknown sniper had given his team a fighting chance against overwhelming odds. Walsh detected movement suggesting that some Taliban forces were beginning to withdraw from exposed positions, though substantial enemy strength remained in place around the hilltop. The psychological impact of the sniper's precision fire was affecting enemy morale and tactical decision-making in ways that benefited the surrounded SEALs. The first pale light of dawn began creeping across the Afghan mountains at 0530 hours, revealing the full scope of the battlefield that had been hidden by darkness. Through his rifle scope, Mendez could now see the bodies of more than 20 Taliban fighters scattered across the hillside, evidence of the mysterious sniper's deadly accurate shooting throughout the night. Rodriguez used the improved visibility to assess their tactical situation more precisely. Taliban positions surrounded their hilltop on 3 sides, with enemy fighters concealed behind rocks and in small gullies that provided protection from both the SEAL defensive fire and the unknown marksman who had been supporting them. The morning light also revealed disturbing details about the enemy forces they faced. Many of the Taliban fighters carried modern assault rifles, advanced optical equipment, and wore military-style gear that indicated professional training rather than typical insurgent operations. This was a coordinated military unit, not a collection of local fighters. Thompson intercepted radio communications indicating that Taliban commanders were planning a coordinated assault timed with the sunrise, hoping to use improved visibility to overwhelm the surrounded Americans before coalition reinforcements could arrive. Enemy forces had been reinforced during the night despite their casualties. Kim distributed water and conducted medical checks on all team members as they prepared for what might be their final engagement. Everyone had minor wounds from rock fragments, and fatigue was becoming a significant factor after 8 hours of sustained combat operations. Through his spotting scope, Sullivan identified at least 40 Taliban fighters in positions around their hilltop, with additional forces visible in the valley below. The enemy had used darkness to reposition heavy weapons, including machine guns and rocket-propelled grenades, that could be devastatingly effective in daylight. The mysterious sniper had remained silent for the past hour, leading Rodriguez to wonder whether their unknown protector had withdrawn during the night. Without continued sniper support, the SEAL team would face overwhelming odds once the Taliban launched their dawn assault. Walsh prepared the last of their explosive charges for use against the most likely enemy approach routes, but acknowledged that their defensive preparations were insufficient against the numbers they faced. The rocky terrain that had provided some protection during darkness offered limited concealment against daylight observation. Mendez reported movement in Taliban positions suggesting preparation for immediate assault. Enemy fighters were checking weapons, redistributing ammunition, and positioning heavy weapons for direct fire support of attacking infantry. The coordinated nature of their preparations indicated experienced military leadership. The sunrise assault began at 06:01 p.m. hours with intensive fire from multiple Taliban positions simultaneously. Machine gun fire raked the SEAL position while rocket-propelled grenades exploded against the rocky terrain, sending deadly fragments flying through the air. The volume of incoming fire exceeded anything the team had experienced during the night engagement. Rodriguez coordinated defensive fires while Thompson called desperately for air support from the AC-130 gunship that was finally approaching their area. The aircraft crew reported clear weather conditions and were prepared to engage enemy forces, but required precise target identification to avoid hitting friendly positions. The Taliban assault came in 3 coordinated waves, with fighters advancing, under covering fire while heavy weapons suppressed the SEAL position. Kim moved between team members treating wounds and redistributing ammunition as the intensity of combat reached levels that tested even their exceptional training. Sullivan engaged the nearest enemy fighters with disciplined automatic fire, but the sheer number of attackers made individual target engagement impossible. The SEALs were forced to use area fire techniques to suppress multiple enemy positions while conserving their limited ammunition supply. Just as the situation appeared hopeless, the mysterious sniper resumed shooting with devastating effect. The first shot eliminated a Taliban machine gunner who had been providing crucial fire support for advancing infantry. The second shot dropped the RPG gunner who posed the greatest threat to the SEAL position. The sniper's renewed engagement came at the critical moment when Taliban forces were closest to overrunning the hilltop position. Precision fire began systematically eliminating assault leaders and heavy weapons crews, disrupting the coordinated attack just as it reached maximum intensity. Through his rifle scope, Mendez observed the sniper engaging targets with impossible accuracy despite the chaos of the battlefield. Each shot was placed with surgical precision to eliminate the most dangerous threats while avoiding any risk of hitting the surrounded SEALs. Walsh detonated explosive charges as Taliban fighters reached within 30 meters of their position, but the blasts only temporarily slowed the assault. Enemy forces continued advancing, despite taking significant casualties from both defensive fire and the unknown sniper's precision shooting. The AC-130 gunship finally arrived over the battlefield and began engaging Taliban positions with 40mm cannon fire. The aircraft crew used thermal imaging to distinguish between friendly and enemy forces, delivering devastating firepower against concentrations of Taliban fighters while avoiding the SEAL position. Thompson coordinated between the gunship crew and his team on the ground, directing airstrikes against enemy positions while maintaining communication with their operations center. The combination of air support and continued sniper fire began turning the tide of the engagement decisively in favor of the Americans. Kim treated Sullivan for shrapnel wounds while Rodriguez assessed their tactical situation. The arrival of close air support had broken the Taliban assault, but enemy forces remained in positions around the hilltop and continued to pose a significant threat to the SEAL team. The mysterious sniper continued engaging high-value targets with methodical precision, focusing on Taliban fighters who were attempting to coordinate withdrawal or establish new defensive positions. Each shot demonstrated intimate knowledge of infantry tactics and remarkable marksmanship skills. Rodriguez finally established brief radio contact with the unknown marksman using an emergency frequency. The voice that responded was calm and professional, identifying himself only as Overwatch and confirming he would continue providing fire support until the SEAL team could be extracted safely. The gunship crew reported that helicopter extraction was now possible due to improved weather conditions, but Taliban forces in the area posed continued threats to aircraft operations. The unknown sniper and AC-130 would need to suppress enemy positions while extraction helicopters approached the landing zone. Mendez observed through his scope that Taliban casualties from the combined effects of SEAL defensive fire, sniper precision, shooting, and airstrikes had been devastating. More than 60 enemy fighters had been eliminated, with many more wounded or scattered by the intensity of the engagement. The tactical situation had been transformed from hopeless to survivable through the intervention of the mysterious sniper and timely arrival of air support. However, the identity of Overwatch remained unknown, and his exceptional shooting skills continued to puzzle the veteran SEALs. Sullivan reported that Taliban forces were beginning organized withdrawal from their positions around the hilltop, but significant enemy strength remained in the valley below. The extraction would require careful coordination to avoid additional casualties during helicopter operations. Thompson received confirmation that 2 CH-47 helicopters were en route to their position with an estimated arrival time of 40 minutes. The aircraft would be accompanied by escort gunships to provide additional fire support during the extraction operation. As the immediate threat diminished, Rodriguez reflected on the night's engagement and the mysterious intervention that had saved his team. Someone with exceptional military training and intimate knowledge of their situation had risked everything to provide life-saving fire support to 6 surrounded Americans in hostile territory. The extraction helicopters appeared as distant specks against the morning sky at 7:45 hours, their distinctive rotor noise echoing off the mountain peaks. Rodriguez felt a mixture of relief and curiosity as his team prepared for extraction, while the identity of their mysterious protector remained unknown. Overwatch had maintained radio silence since their brief contact 30 minutes earlier. Thompson coordinated with the approaching aircraft while Kim prepared casualties for medical evacuation. Sullivan's shrapnel wounds required immediate attention, and everyone showed signs of exhaustion from the prolonged engagement. The SEAL medic worked efficiently to stabilize wounds and prepare his teammates for helicopter transport. The AC-130 gunship continued circling the area, engaging scattered Taliban positions that posed potential threats to the extraction operation. Precision fire from the aircraft had devastated enemy forces throughout the valley, but isolated fighters remained capable of engaging helicopters with rocket-propelled grenades or machine guns. As the lead CH-47 approached their landing zone, Rodriguez made a critical decision. His team's extraction was assured, but the mysterious sniper who had saved their lives remained alone in hostile territory. Professional military ethics demanded they attempt to extract Overwatch along with their own personnel. Rodriguez called the unknown marksman on the emergency frequency, offering extraction with the SEAL team. The response surprised him. Overwatch declined extraction but provided precise coordinates for his position. The voice was calm and professional, with an accent that Rodriguez couldn't immediately identify. Mendez used his rifle scope to observe the coordinates provided by the mysterious sniper. The position was approximately 800 meters away on a ridge that offered excellent fields of fire over the entire battlefield. The location would have required exceptional skill to reach undetected through Taliban-controlled territory. The first helicopter touched down in a swirling cloud of dust and debris, while escort gunships provided covering fire. Rodriguez made another decision that would later prove fateful. He ordered Mendez to remain behind with minimal equipment to establish visual contact with Overwatch, while the rest of the team extracted. Walsh assisted Sullivan toward the helicopter while Thompson gathered sensitive equipment that could not be abandoned in enemy territory. Kim conducted final medical checks and prepared medical reports for the casualties they were evacuating from the battlefield. As the helicopters prepared for departure, Mendez worked his way across the rocky terrain toward the sniper's position. His movement was covered by continued fire from the circling gunship, but Taliban forces in the area remained capable of engaging individual personnel moving across open ground. The SEAL marksman reached the sniper's position after a dangerous 15-minute movement through terrain that offered minimal concealment. What he discovered there challenged everything he thought he knew about the engagement they had just survived. The sniper position was expertly prepared with camouflaged concealment that would have been invisible from Taliban positions below. Brass casings scattered around the position indicated more than 40 precision shots had been fired during the night engagement, far more than the SEALs had observed from their location. Most surprising was the rifle itself, a custom-built precision weapon that combined American optics with modifications that Mendez had never seen before. The ammunition was match-grade .338 Lapua Magnum, capable of exceptional accuracy at the extreme ranges where most shots had been taken. The sniper himself was not what Mendez expected. Overwatch appeared to be a local Afghan, approximately 40 years old, wearing traditional clothing mixed with military equipment. His English was excellent, but carried the accent of someone who had learned the language later in life. The man introduced himself simply as Ahmad, explaining that he had been tracking the same Taliban commander that brought the SEALs to the area. His knowledge of American military tactics and equipment was extensive, suggesting professional military training that went far beyond typical Afghan army capabilities. Ahmad revealed that he had been a translator and guide for American Special Forces units for more than 8 years before going into hiding, when Taliban forces targeted him and his family for collaboration. His exceptional marksmanship skills had been developed during joint operations with various coalition units. The revelation explained the tactical precision of his shooting and his intimate understanding of the SEAL team's situation during the night engagement. Ahmad had fought alongside American forces in similar circumstances and understood exactly which targets posed the greatest threat to surrounded friendly personnel. Mendez learned that Ahmad's family had been killed by Taliban forces 6 months earlier, motivating his personal war against the organization that had destroyed his life. The precision shooting that saved the SEAL team was part of his ongoing campaign of revenge against Taliban leadership in the region. The former translator had been living in the mountains for months, using his knowledge of coalition tactics and advanced marksmanship skills to eliminate high-value Taliban targets. His success had made him a priority target for enemy forces, but his intimate knowledge of local terrain gave him significant advantages. Ahmad showed Mendez a collection of intelligence materials he had gathered during his solitary campaign, including photographs and documents that identified key Taliban leaders operating throughout Kunar province. The information was more current and detailed than anything in coalition intelligence files. The conversation was interrupted by radio contact from Thompson, reporting that Taliban reinforcements were moving toward their area from multiple directions. The extraction helicopters were returning for Mendez, but the window for safe departure was closing rapidly as enemy forces repositioned. Ahmad declined repeated offers of extraction, explaining that his war against the Taliban would continue until either he was killed or had eliminated the commanders responsible for his family's death. His dedication to this personal mission was absolute and not subject to negotiation. Mendez realized that Ahmad possessed capabilities that could benefit ongoing coalition operations against Taliban forces in the region. His intelligence collection, tactical knowledge, and exceptional marksmanship made him an invaluable asset for continuing operations against enemy leadership. The SEAL marksman proposed establishing ongoing communication between Ahmad and coalition forces, allowing coordination of future operations while respecting the Afghans' desire to remain independent. The arrangement would provide mutual benefits without compromising either party's operational security. Ahmad agreed to maintain radio contact using designated frequencies and recognition codes, but emphasized that his primary mission remained personal rather than military. His cooperation would depend on coalition operations supporting his goal of eliminating specific Taliban commanders who had targeted his family. As the extraction helicopter approached, Mendez gathered intelligence materials that Ahmad was willing to share with coalition forces. The documents contained detailed information about Taliban organization, leadership, and planned operations that could save American lives in future engagements. The final conversation between the two marksmen was brief but significant. Ahmad expressed respect for American forces who fought alongside Afghan allies, while Mendez acknowledged the debt his team owed to the mysterious sniper who had saved their lives against impossible odds. The helicopter extraction proceeded smoothly, with escort gunship coverage suppressing scattered Taliban positions in the area. As they lifted off, Mendez observed Ahmad disappearing into terrain that would conceal him from pursuing enemy forces, while keeping the most dangerous Taliban commanders within range of his exceptional marksmanship skills. The identity of Overwatch had been revealed, but the mystery of his capabilities and dedication remained. Ahmad represented the best qualities of Afghan allies who had risked everything to support coalition forces, and his continued solitary campaign would have far-reaching effects on Taliban operations throughout the region. 3 months after the extraction, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez sat in a secure briefing room at Bagram Air Base, reviewing intelligence reports that confirmed Ahmad's continued effectiveness against Taliban leadership throughout Kunar province. The Lao, former translator, had eliminated 7 high-value targets, disrupted multiple planned operations, and become a legend among both coalition forces and Taliban fighters. The intelligence materials Ahmad had shared during Mendez's brief meeting had proven invaluable for coalition operations. Information about Taliban command structure, communication networks, and planned operations had enabled successful raids that eliminated dozens of enemy fighters and prevented numerous attacks against coalition bases. Rodriguez learned that Ahmad had maintained radio contact with coalition intelligence officers, providing real-time information about Taliban movements while continuing his personal campaign of revenge. The arrangement allowed coordination of operations without compromising the Afghans' independence or revealing his location to enemy forces. The psychological impact of Ahmad's shooting had extended far beyond the immediate battlefield where he saved the SEAL team. Taliban commanders throughout the region lived in constant fear of the precision marksman who could eliminate targets at extreme range without warning. Enemy operational effectiveness had been significantly reduced by this psychological pressure. Mendez had been promoted and assigned to train other military marksmen, sharing lessons learned from his encounter with Ahmad. The techniques and tactical principles demonstrated by the mysterious sniper had been incorporated into advanced marksmanship training programs throughout the special operations community. Intelligence. Reports revealed that Taliban forces had assigned substantial resources to hunting Ahmad, but his intimate knowledge of local terrain and exceptional fieldcraft made him nearly impossible to locate. Enemy fighters referred to him as the Ghost of Kunar due to his ability to appear, eliminate targets, and vanish without trace. The ripple effects of that night engagement continued spreading through military and intelligence communities. Ahmad's story had become required reading for coalition personnel deploying to Afghanistan, illustrating the critical importance of supporting local allies who risked everything to fight alongside American forces. Thompson, who had recovered fully from his minor wounds, now worked as a liaison with Afghan interpreters and guides. His experience during the night engagement had given him deep appreciation for the sacrifices made by local allies who faced deadly retaliation for supporting coalition operations. Kim had been decorated for his medical performance during the sustained firefight and later established training programs for combat medics deploying to similar environments. His experience treating casualties under intense fire while maintaining ammunition supply had become a case study in military medical training. Walsh continued serving with special operations units, but carried with him profound respect for the unknown allies who supported American forces in hostile territory. The explosives expert frequently shared Ahmad's story with younger personnel to emphasize the importance of building relationships with local allies. Sullivan had recovered completely from his shrapnel wounds and returned to active duty with renewed understanding of how individual courage could change the outcome of seemingly hopeless situations. His experience during the night engagement influenced his approach to leadership and tactical decision-making. Rodriguez received intelligence reports every few weeks detailing Ahmad's continued operations against Taliban forces. Each report confirmed another high-value target eliminated, another planned attack disrupted, another example of exceptional marksmanship applied with surgical precision against enemy leadership. The original mission to capture the Ghost, the Taliban commander who had brought the SEALs to Kunar province, had been completed 2 weeks after their extraction. Intelligence provided by Ahmad had enabled a successful raid that eliminated the target along with his entire command staff. Coalition forces began incorporating lessons learned from Ahmad's techniques into their own operations. The combination of intimate terrain knowledge, cultural understanding, and advanced military skills had proven devastatingly effective against conventional Taliban tactics and organization. The former translator's personal war had evolved into something larger than revenge. Ahmad had become a symbol of Afghan resistance to Taliban oppression, inspiring other former coalition allies to continue fighting, despite the risks to themselves and their families. Intelligence officers reported that Ahmad's operations had forced Taliban commanders to significantly modify their tactics throughout Kunar province. Enemy forces now moved in smaller groups, avoided predictable patterns, and constantly changed communication procedures to reduce their vulnerability to precision targeting. The long-term strategic impact of Ahmad's campaign extended beyond immediate tactical effects. Taliban recruitment in the region had declined as potential fighters recognized the futility of joining an organization whose leadership could be eliminated without warning by an invisible adversary. Rodriguez reflected on the profound lessons learned during that night engagement in the Afghan mountains. The intervention of a single individual with exceptional skills and unwavering dedication had transformed a hopeless tactical situation into a strategic victory with lasting effects. The story of Ahmad and the surrounded SEALs had become part of military folklore, passed down through generations of special operations personnel as an example of how individual courage and skill could overcome seemingly impossible odds in the most desperate circumstances. Military historians studying the engagement concluded that Ahmad's intervention represented one of the most effective individual combat performances in the entire Afghan conflict. His precision shooting had eliminated more high-value targets in a single engagement than most entire units achieved during extended deployments. The psychological warfare aspects of Ahmad's campaign had proven as important as his tactical effectiveness. Taliban forces throughout Afghanistan became aware that former coalition allies possessed capabilities that could threaten their leadership anywhere, at any time, without warning. Coalition intelligence continued monitoring Ahmad's activities. Through periodic radio contact and surveillance reports from friendly Afghan sources, the former translator remained active in his mountain stronghold, continuing his solitary campaign against Taliban leadership with undiminished effectiveness. Rodriguez's final intelligence report confirmed that Ahmad had achieved his primary objective, eliminating the Taliban commanders responsible for his family's death. However, the former translator had chosen to continue his campaign, recognizing that his unique capabilities could protect other Afghan families from similar tragedies. The legacy of that night engagement extended far beyond the 6 SEALs who had been saved by Ahmad's intervention. The story demonstrated the profound impact that individual courage, exceptional skill, and unwavering dedication could have on the outcome of larger conflicts. Years later, when Rodriguez retired from military service, he carried with him the memory of the mysterious voice on the radio who had identified himself simply as Overwatch. The encounter had taught him that heroes come in many forms, often appearing when least expected to turn the tide of battle through individual acts of extraordinary courage and skill.